Hello again and welcome to another Morning Mondays. This is episode 48 and today guys I've been working on my Japanese medium machine gun for my bolt action IJA army, the Imperial Japanese Army. And I have to say this is actually the model that got me into bolt action Japanese. I don't know why I love it, but I just love the Japanese medium machine gun. The more I read about it, the more I learnt about it, the more I just fell in love with this wacky gun. We'll get into the historicals a little bit later on, guys. Just taking on board some feedback from last week when I started mentioning the bolt action stuff. People were really interested to see more of it, so if that's what you guys want, that's what you guys will get. And also people said they really enjoyed the just little sprinkling, a little seasoning of historical sort of information whilst I was talking about the model. So like last week I mentioned like the Japanese, they just didn't really see the benefit of like SMG technology until it was way too late, which is just mad. Likewise with this machine gun, there's some crazy historical stuff about it that sort of in theory sounds great, but in reality was total bollocks. And I just love it because it's just a crack. I don't know what it is about it. I just love the woodpecker machine gun. We'll get into that later on, but let's focus on the hobbying and the painting first. So this model is from Warlord Games. It is their Japanese medium machine gun, and it's fairly cheap. I think it's about £6 or £7, and that's from Warlord Games itself. If you want to go to a third-party retailer, you can probably get about 10 to 20% off. But to be honest, the models are already fairly cheap. So unlike with Games Workshop, when getting 20% off like a £30 kit is a big deal, getting 10% off a £7 kit here, it's percentages wise, yeah, it's still it's the same percentage, but saving 70 pence just to go to a third-party retailer where you might not get it as quickly and you might have delays, it's just not really worth it. So one of the things I would say is, I have no issue with buying directly from Warlord Games. You pay 10% more, but it's a matter of pence, and you get the service and the delivery just instantaneously. I bought these models a while ago during the height of the UK lockdown when they were saying there's going to be delivery delays and everything. I bought them, free postage. 2 days later, I think, they turned up on my doorstep. It was incredible. It was just, yeah, so big shout out, to Warlord Games. They've done their customer service is fantastic so far. So the model itself, it comes in 4 or 5 pieces. So each one of the bodies is single piece, and then the heads you have to glue on. You get 3 heads. You don't get any choice with the heads. I mean, you could glue them on the different models in different ways if you ended up getting more than one of these things, but it's not like Games Workshop. You don't get loads and loads and loads of different bits in the box. You get what you need to build the model, and that is it. That's a good thing and a bad thing. Good thing is it's cheaper. Like I said, this thing's pretty cheap. It's £7 for one of these things, and you don't really need more than one of it in your army. It's about the same price as an Imperial Guidehead weapon team. It's about £1 cheaper actually, but you only need the one. So the way the game system works, it's actually much cheaper to collect bolt action. So it's cheaper for bolt action, but on the flip side is you don't really get that many options. There's not a huge amount of conversion possibilities on the metal models, but that's all right because you don't really convert metal models. And this is a metal model, so a lot of the blister packs you get from Warlords, as far as I can tell, all the blister packs are in metal. And that's fine by me because I enjoy working with metal models because I'm a madman. I can't give you any logical reasons for why I like working with metal models. Plastic models in general are, far superior. Metal models, they chip, they're heavier, they're difficult to transport. But I love working with metal models because I've been working with them for a long time, especially with all my, Mordian, Iron Guard, and my original metal Stormtroopers that I'm working on. So, like I said, you get the bodies one piece, the heads go on, and then the machine gun comes in 2 parts. It comes with the tripod, and then the machine gun goes on top, and then you get the big round base. So, what was my experience with this kit? It was pretty good. The heads went together fairly well, and the machine gun went together fairly well. One thing I would say is, when I was trying to put the machine gun together, where the gun connects to the tripod, I couldn't get it. I was being very stupid. I couldn't get it to make it look like the gun was shooting level. It kept looking like it was shooting into the ground or shooting downhill, which was really annoying. I didn't like that. So what I did was the complicated thing, which is make some milliput and stick it, build it up bit by bit until I got it to the level that I wanted. What I discovered afterwards was that you can actually just bend the metal model, the tripod feet, so that it raises the model up more and more. You just bend them in a bit, and it raises it up. That's what I should have done. Because what you have to do is you have to what I'm talking about is you have to line the gun up with the tripod with the guy's hands, because the guy's hands are part of his model, not part of the gun. Just like with a guard, just heavy weapon team. So obviously, if his hands are too high up, then the gun is pointing down. Or if the tripod is too low, the gun is pointing down. So I did the complicated thing is of making the bit where it connects to the gun higher and higher, and just carefully doing it with green stuff. Milliput. Where what you should do is those little 2 feet at the front, you just bend them in a bit more, and it just raises it up. So there you go. Learn from my mistake, guys. Painting wise, yeah, no problem. I base coated all of these just by hand, just used a paintbrush, and I base coated them in Mornfang brown. Used all Citadel paints. Based in Mornfang brown. Then did the tan uniforms with, what the heck's it called? It used to be called Talan Sand. It's called Zandri Dust now. That's it, Zandri Dust. Then did the green leg wrapping things are in Catalan green, and the boots and the webbing in Gawthorpe brown, and the skin colour is just Cadian flesh tone, except that I did lots of washes of Seraphim Sepia over it to make it a bit darker. So I did two washes of Seraphim Sepia to make it a bit darker, to try and account for sort of the specific skin tone. I just tried. It's a simple enough way of doing it. And then on the gun, I use Catalan green on the base, because I normally have a bit more green on the infantry guys, because normally they're wearing the helmets, and I paint the helmets Catalan green, but this time they've got the forage caps, so I painted those tan, because that's what we meant to do. And so I made up for the green deficit, or the Catalan green deficit, by using it on the base. And then the gun. Now, I didn't want the gun to be silver. Okay, I didn't want it to be all metal, because that's unrealistic. Now, with the rifles, you can kind of get away with it a bit. Okay, now with the bolt action rifles, if you paint them like black, which is the colour you're meant to do, and then you've got the dark wood colour, it looks like the rifle's all one colour. And this is one of the big problems I have with World War II miniatures, is that you see a lot of them painted really realistically, but it looks like the model is basically all one colour. Like, one good thing about Games Workshop models is that you can paint them in loads of wacky colours, but those wacky colours help you see the detail, and they really make things pop, whereas with historicals you often find they just look like one colour when they're painted too realistically. So like, my leg wraps probably shouldn't be green, they should probably also be tan, and so should the boots. In fact, all the uniforms should be the same colour, but it just makes the models look not very good, unfortunately, and I like my models to look good. So as a Warhammer player coming into bot action, I try and strike that balance between historical, 100% historical accuracy, and picking out the fine detail. So what I did with the gun is I painted it black, and then I just did a light dry brush of Ironbreaker over it. And then for the strips of ammunition, I didn't really have the right colour for the strips of ammunition. They're meant to be more of a shiny brass, but I had brass scorpion, and I used brass scorpion with a wash of Norn oil, and that's pretty much it. I mean, going over it now, I would probably consider doing them in maybe Retributor Gold, because that's quite a nice dark gold, which I've recently been experimenting with. But yeah, that's it. So that's overall, that's the model. Really enjoyed it. Solid bit. Now, I know I got some flack last week for my old school style basing technique with just the bright green. It's kind of a personal preference, guys. I've been painting a lot of texture paint on bases for the last year, and I just wanted to go back and just enjoy using some just standard flock. you can take enjoyment from the simple things in life. And yeah, we have all these amazing texture paints now, but in many ways, and not necessarily in this case, I will admit, but in many ways, flock is a very enjoyable material to work with. It's very simple. Texture paint, you have to wait for it to dry, and then you have to wash it, and if it doesn't work, you have to put some more on to get more cracks. Flock, you use glue on the base, or in my case, I just use a thick layer of brown paint and then just put it through the flock, and it just works great. And it's really good with historicals, because a lot of the battles did take place in like fields and open country and stuff. I mean, obviously there's a lot of urban warfare, but there was a lot of a lot of field and countryside warfare as well, which I'm appreciating to getting the opportunity to base. So, and last thing I would say is, have to remember, guys, bot action is not going to be my main game. It's something I'm doing for a bit of fun, to break up painting the Mordians, stop stuff from getting burned out, and therefore I don't want to go too deep dive on the detail, because I'll just have another project which I get burned out on. These guys are meant to be relaxing, hence the simple colour scheme and the simple basing. So I know it's not as good as it could be. I appreciate the feedback, not dismissing it at all, just explaining sort of my reasoning behind it. It's just a bit of fun. So yeah, the one thing I want to say about it, so why do I love this machine gun so much? So this machine gun is like a really, really good example of how, and I'll wrap it up with this little historical fact, guys. So this machine gun is a really, really good example of how something that looks good on paper doesn't necessarily translate well into the real world. So the Japanese, you have to like, I think all their weapon design was done by one guy, by basically this company called Nambo. I think the guy who ran it was like General Nambo as well. I can't remember off the top of my head. And he basically did everything. And they don't. It just seems, I'm only just learning about it, but it seems like no one could really get rid of him. Like he got into the position of basically having the monopoly on Japanese weapon designs, and then for some reason, even though he kept coming up with these really wacky out of the box weapon designs, no one really criticised him. No one really bothered. So yeah, they just stuck with these wacky weapons. You know, an example being on one of the bolt action rifles, they put a bipod. No, a monopod. Just a monopod. Not for a sniper rifle, just for a basic bolt action rifle. And they put like anti-aircraft sights on the bolt action rifles as well. And it's mad. It's mad. But why do I love this machine gun so much? Because in theory, it works really, really well. So it was nicknamed the Woodpecker by the American soldiers that faced it because of its incredible slow rate of fire. It's literally like tat 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 tat. And when you're thinking about, you know, like the German MG42, which like, you know, it's firing so fast that you can't hear the individual shots. When you compare that to what the Japanese were using, which had a really low rate of fire, it was called the Woodpecker. And you might think, well, why did they go for such a low rate of fire? And then on top of that, they didn't use belt-fed ammunition in their machine guns. If you look at the majority of medium machine guns in other armed forces, you know, you've got the American, the 1919 machine gun, that's belt-fed, and then you had the British Vickers, and you had the Russian Maxim, and you had the German MG34 and MG42. They're all using belt-fed ammunition, but the Japanese didn't go for belt-fed ammunition. The Japanese went for strips of ammunition, rigid strips. So rather than with the belt where you open the gun up, slap the belt in, you make sure it's seated right, close it down, rack it, and then you fire your 100 rounds. Then when you have to load the new belt, you have to open it, and there's that long delay of maybe up to like 10 seconds where you get the new belt, you put it in, you seat it and close it. The Japanese saw that and were like, we don't like it. We don't like the long delays between changing belts. So what we want is to have a continuous rate of fire. That was the Japanese thinking behind it. Just a never-ending stream of fire. So they did this. They had a slow rate of fire on the gun and really good cooling on the gun, which meant that you could fire it continuously at that tap, tap, tap. Well, that's a little slow. Tap, 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 tap. You could fire at that continuous rate of fire, and it will never overheat. as long as you can keep feeding rounds into it, it will never overheat, which is really good for keeping your enemies pinned down in theory. You know, in theory, if you never pause your rate of fire, your enemy can never really advance, which is in theory really cool. And that's where the stripper clips came into it as well. With with the slow rate of fire, so it never overheated, and then not having to stop to change belts. Instead, you can get one of these strips out, 30 round strip, and you feed it into the side of the machine gun. And whilst that one is going tap, 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 tap through, you get the next one ready. And just before that first one finishes, you put the next one in, and the gun picks it up. And so as one falls out, the next couple of rounds have already been shot from the second one. Pap, 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 pap. And you can just continuously feed strips of ammo. And the gun had a little oil brush in it, so to make sure, again, it never jammed, that you could continuously keep that rate of fire up. It like oiled every round. And so it never, in ideal conditions, it never stopped firing. You never got a chance to like dash between the, unlike with an MG34 or MG, more like the MG42, where when they had to change the barrel, you could dash a bit closer. When they had to change the belt, you could dash a bit closer. In theory, with the Japanese Type 92 medium machine gun, you can never dash closer. The reality of the situation is that you're not always under ideal battlefield conditions. Maybe you don't have an infinite supply of strip rounds. You know, what happens when, you know, the supply lines have been disrupted and you've only got like a box of 10 stripper clips or of 30 stripper clips. Well, in that case, it doesn't matter. You know, that high rate of that slow rate of fire doesn't really help you, because you've only got a certain amount of ammunition. You might as well put that ammunition down as quickly as possible and keep people pinned. As you know, just keep them and just shred people. You might as well do that. You might as well have a high rate of fire in that instance. You're going to run out of ammo quickly either way. And what happens when you don't have oil for the oil brush, so it can't lubricate every round? You know, it's things like that. So it's a really interesting. So in reality, this is what I think we do. And I'm not a military expert by any means, but in reality, what worked out to be better is it is better to put a lot of rounds on target quickly than to put a continuous stream of rounds on target. So it's better, you know, especially if you're like advancing and you're trying to cover and advance. You kind of want to like get your machine gun down, burst. You know, just then quickly get up, run forward, get the new belt in. Same thing. It's quicker and better to do that than not quicker. It's just better to do that in reality, just to absolutely just put a holy amount of lead down really quickly, than to just pop, 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 pop. So it's really interesting what worked out. So in theory, the gun was great. But the reality was that when theory meets reality, it doesn't always stand up. And the reality is that it turns out in war, it's just better to get as many rounds down as quickly as possible. So there we go. And that's why I love this thing, because I love the theory behind it. I love that that when you think about it, it's a really good principle. And under ideal conditions, one could argue that the Type 92 is really, really good. If you could just feed ammo into it non-stop, and you've got like 10 or 15 of these things, you're never going to advance up that hill if that's being covered by a bunch of Type 92s with all the ammo they could possibly need. You are never going to advance up it. You're going to have to bomb it before you get to it, because they're never going to stop pinning you down. In theory, that's great, but the reality is, I guess Japan just didn't have the industrial capacity to make that reality happen. That theory into reality. So hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. Hope you enjoyed the modelling and the review of the kit and the painting and my thoughts behind the basing. I hope you enjoyed the little seasoning of historical information. Let me know down in the comments what you want to see next week. I can paint up some more regular infantry, or I can get another weapon team done. So the choice of weapon teams are, I have a Japanese Type 92 70mm gun, which is a really, really tiny howitzer. It's really funny. It looks really, really funny. Or I've got the Imperial Japanese Tank Hunters, which is the anti-tank rifle and then also the suicide anti-tank guy. It's a bit controversial. Then I've got the Japanese Type 1 47mm anti-tank gun. This kit looks like it's going to be a bit of a bitch to put together, so I'm not super keen to do that one just yet. But if the people speak, I shall. I've got the Imperial Japanese Army officers, so got a guy with a samurai sword, guy with a Nambu pistol, and some like a guy with an umbrella, and there's a medic and a forward observer. We've got the Imperial Japanese Army 81mm mortar team, standard medium mortar. And I've also got the Imperial Japanese Baron Nishi, which is just a single officer on horseback, which is really cool. So, officer on horse, medium mortar, HQ, basically commanders and command squad, anti-tank gun, micro howitzer, or the anti-tank rifle, and suicide anti-tank guys. Let me know which kit you want to see. Or I can paint up another like 5 or 10 basic Japanese infantry. Let me know what you prefer. They'll all just be on with like bolt actions and stuff. Let me know what you guys want to see, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.